और नहीं है और लाओ ना.
Hello, everybody. We're back after a break and delighted to be joined by Suhel Seth, who has been missing for a couple of weeks. But you can tell that he's been to a spa or some sort of retreat because he's looking so much better. And Suhel, welcome back on the channel.
Thank you.
And I really wanted you here because you're the only person I know who's old enough to remember the National Herald and what its purpose was and why it existed and what's happening now. So over to you. Can you give our audience, and before we start, Jay will be joining us soon, but we've got Suhel here with us, so I said let me just get started. So Suhel, just tell us a little background on this.
So if you go into the history of the National Herald, they claim that it was a paper founded in order to address the exigencies and the doublespeak and the propaganda of the British. And it was primarily Jawaharlal Nehru, who in his own right was a great literature and, a man of letters. And obviously the National Herald then morphed from being a paper of independence to a paper of subjugation under the Congress. And it became almost like the Congress mouthpiece. And if you remember in those days, uh, all newspapers, and it is unfair to only blame National Herald, all newspapers got land from the government, and this land was given at very deep discounts. And National Herald, like everyone else, also availed of that facility. Now, what happens is it gets, to quote Alice in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. Because it's a newspaper, it had three functionalities. Number one, it was drawing ads. Number two, the building was there, which was owned by them, and it was in the name of a trust. Obviously, the trustees were all those who were loyal to the family or whatever. Most newspapers have used those building rentals to actually supplement or, in many ways, support the income. Yeah, support the income. So what began to happen was you saw that National Herald then became a tool, or so we've been told by all the reports, became a tool of fund collection and ostensibly fund diversion. That's when Subramaniam Swamy jumped into the fray and actually filed a case. So you have to give it to Subramaniam Swamy for all his idiosyncrasies. He was the person who was relentless in terms of telling people that, look, there is something wrong and rotten in the state of National Herald. Now we come to a situation where this case is being in courts. The agencies are now moving to attach properties of National Herald. And obviously, the people who've been named are all the trustees, as they would be in any situation such as this. Is it political vendetta? Maybe. If it is, good. If you have something to hide, there's an old saying, if you do the crime, you have to do the time. Now, for everyone to, be all pious and holier than thou and say that, oh, we don't know, this is political vendetta. Of course it is. Well, you shouldn't have screwed up in the first place. So, this, in a nutshell, is a backdrop of the National Herald case.
Okay, and Jay, and of course, Pallavi's joined us as well. Thanks, Jay. I'm going to go over to you. If you can, Suhail just gave us a backgrounder on what National Herald is. Now, if you could just get the legal perspective from you to start us off.
Hi, Advaita, and hi, Suhail. Hi, Pallavi. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm sorry I was slightly late, but I caught a glimpse of, I heard a little bit of what Mr. Seth was saying, and he's quite right. I agree with, he's laid it out quite beautifully, as he always does. But, looking at it strictly from a PMLA prism, a money laundering prism and a criminal law prism, if I could just bring in some perspective on that. From my perspective, I do not think there is any political vendetta in this case. This is a prosecutor's dream, a case like this. And if I could just lay out maybe 4 dates for you and just 4 points, and just simplify it with that. And, maybe your viewers will appreciate that. So as Mr. Seth pointed out, that in 1938, Jawaharlal Nehru comes up with this newspaper. It's the freedom struggle, and he wants to come out with a paper, admirable, very nice. It goes on for many years till it is not profitable anymore, and they're drawing massive rental income.
Very nice.
And of course, you had the multiple Congress governments in power, which gave a lot of land to the trust that controlled this newspaper, the National Herald. So by the end of it, they come to acquire and control about conservatively estimated 2,000 crore worth of properties. So this is the property that this National Herald controls, the controlling entity, Associated Journals Limited. So this is what is at stake. Now, along the way, they do not computerize. They do not computerize themselves. They do not modernize. And, in a very, very competitive media landscape, they essentially cannot survive. And they take another 90 crore rupee infusion from the Congress party into the AJL. So another 90 crore rupees come in. So this is a debt now that AJL owes to the Congress party. Now, unable to discharge that, in 2008, they shut down. So I'm assuming the great mind Motilal Vora, he had a very devious, according to me, my personal opinion, he had a very devious mind. And he used, his knowledge of taxation, companies law, the Companies Act, to create these devices for all sorts of nefarious purposes, and which brings me now to Young Indian Limited, which is why this company was set up. Now, Young Indian Limited is also set up with 38% shareholding each for Mr. Rahul Gandhi and for Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. And you have two other family retainers, Oscar Fernandez and Motilal Vora, who are also on the board of this as shareholders. Now, this is where the criminality comes in. And honestly, look at the audacity. Look at their audacity. What they do is, they say that, look, we will take over the shares and the debt of this AJL for 50 lakh rupees. You give us all the shares, right? And with all the shares, they also take over all the properties that belong to AJL and to the National Herald. So by paying 50 lakh rupees, you've ostensibly taken over the debt. Sure, that sounds very nice, but you've also taken over properties worth 2,000 crores. Now the criminality. Now this is the last part, and thank you for bearing with me. The last part is interesting because all of these properties that were acquired along the way, these aren't properties that belong to those four shareholders of AJL, of Young Indian Limited. These were donations given by the public at large, taxpayers' money, that was used to grant, all that land and property to National Herald across the country. And now suddenly the family members of the Congress party decide one day that, well, you know what, it's shut down, but we should control these properties. And we know how properties are controlled in this country. In fact, the whole Waqf issue was this, that Waqf properties would be let out and monetized for basically no money, and the actual beneficiaries would get no money. In a very similar way, in a suspiciously similar way, you have the Congress party, the first family, is coming in and taking over all of that. So there is 100% there is criminality in this. It is criminal breach of trust, cheating, whatever you want to call it, and essentially proceeds of crime. These are proceeds of crime that were attempted. They attempted, to launder these proceeds of crime, which is why the PMLA has come in as a Section 3 offence. And the last part is the latest development, that under Section 44 and 45 now, 44 of the PMLA, there is now a prosecution complaint, which is another word for a charge sheet in PMLA parlance that is now being filed, which means that they have found a lot of evidence, hard, actionable evidence, which is being presented before a court for it to take cognizance. So we're looking at a trial beginning, folks.
How soon would a trial like this begin?
The moment the court takes cognizance, the special court will take cognizance, and you will have a trial on its way.
And what's the
PMLA offense?
One second, what's the freedom fighter angle? Like originally it was freedom fighters who had shares in this?
No, the angle there is you fight for anything that's free. And they got it free for too long. That's the freedom fighter angle. It is nothing but a nefarious racket. It is, as Jay rightly said, it is diversion of funds. It is money laundering. It is totally violative of any governance norms. Look, I'm not saying that National Herald are the only people doing it. But then when you're in the public eye, you've got to be, Caesar's wife has got to be above suspicion. And I think this whole snafu has occurred because they actually thought they could get away with it.
Right. Pallavi, you were saying
Is,
something. I'm sorry.
is
No, I
Pallavi
was just
awake?
saying that I was asking Jay that isn't the hearing arguments beginning on 25th? I think the charge sheet will be heard from 25th onwards.
So typically, Pallavi, what happens is in a case like this, when the prosecution, the ED files its complaint, the charge sheet, then you have the next stage is arguments on charge. So you will basically, the other side also gets a chance to come and argue and say that there isn't any evidence, any material in the charge sheet to make out the offenses or the sections or the provisions that have been charged against that person. After that stage, they will frame the charges against the accused persons and the trial will begin with the prosecution leading evidence. That's how it sort of begins. So yeah, it's beginning
Do they
now.
have
So
to
now,
apply
yeah.
for bail again, Jay? Because that's something I'm not able to understand. Do they need to apply for bail again?
No, if they've already obtained bail, then they need not take bail again.
They've got bail, yeah.
When then
Yeah, but
they do not.
Pallavi, being such an accomplished journalist, you do know that they're out on bail. I mean, the
I
BJP
know, but
never
I was
forgets
told-
to remind
I
them.
was told-
So why do you ask? No, 1 minute. Why do you ask questions to which you already have the answers and the world knows the answers? They are out on bail. It has been said repeatedly by Kiran Rijiju and other worthies of the BJP that you people are out on bail. Which part of this did you not comprehend to be true or something worth veracity, given your
Jay,
vast
please stop.
accomplishments
This
as a
is the way
journalist?
Suhel normally is. Since he's coming on this show after such a long time, I'm going to be nice to him. But Jay, I was told it was anticipatory bail, so they have to now, apply for regular bail. Am I wrong in this?
No,
That's now-
well, the law now is very clear. Once a charge sheet has been filed, it signals the completion of an investigation by the prosecution. So there's really no need now for the ED to take them into custody, and therefore there is really no need for bail to be taken separately. The anticipatory bail can just as well suffice, to keep them out of prison.
Pallavi,
Yeah.
I mean, Jay is the only lawyer on the panel, but let me explain something for future reference. Investigating agencies investigate a crime. Sometimes when they take that case to the courts, sometimes they say that, look, we do not want this person to be on bail if they believe that the witness could tamper.
Yeah.
If the person could tamper with evidence or lean on witnesses or is a flight risk.
Correct.
The court then decides, okay, we don't think Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi are flight risks or whoever it is. And then the court grants you anticipatory bail. When you're on anticipatory bail, you then wait for the trial to assume. The trial assumes, as Jay said, after the investigating agencies have filed the charge sheet on the basis of which the prosecution begins its arguments. And the defense then argues against that prosecution. Is that a fair understanding, Jay?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking that you would have made a very fine lawyer. And you know
Oh,
why?
very
It would have been fun to see you.
Nice to him.
It would have been fun to see you as a lawyer. I'll tell you why. Because the off chance you'd have made it to the bench, you would have been a really fun judge to deal with.
I know, yeah.
So,
Well,
it's
now
in another lifetime, perhaps.
Suhel, I have to
Perhaps
tell you-
another lifetime.
Suhel, I have to tell you the
Yeah.
little I know of Jay. He's actually quite a nice guy. He's nice to people who don't even deserve to be nice.
I know, that's why he's tolerating you. It's quite evident.
This is why I told you I used a special word for him in our chat, Jay. Why I was trying to avoid.
My memory fails me.
then-
I don't know what you said. I don't remember what you said.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
client
Advaita.
lawyer privilege. But Pallavi, listen, what's happening with Congress? Are they scared? Are they rattled? I mean, what's the vibe?
No, I think the Gandhis are very apprehensive. The Congress, I know it's going to come across as sounding little horrible, but many of them, some I spoke to, they say, in politics, अच्छा होगा अगर एक दो arrest हो जाए, which is why I was asking him about whether there can be a thing to take them into custody or whether they need to apply for bail. Because see, the Congress looks at it as a kind of a lifeline. You get the sympathy and all of that, and especially Sonia Gandhi, which is why the Congress is doing things like going out on the streets. They are protesting. outside the ED offices. On 25th, they have certainly have big plans. I think the Gandhis also plan to make a show of it, going all the way from their home to the court and that kind of stuff. So the Congress also has big plans. They're going to take to the streets. They're going to walk it down from AICC to the court and all of that. So politically, they would certainly want to milk it. In the case of Vadra, Priyanka Vadra, of course, did milk it because she went there, hugging her husband and all of that stuff. But over here, in this case, the entire party across the country, they certainly want to use this as a huge political weapon to kind of, bring the cadre together, reignite those emotions, and Sonia Gandhi being the big factor. I mean, Sonia Gandhi.
So basically, Advaita, if you see, and this is a serious point, today they are caught at all levels. They've been entangled at all strata. Mrs. Gandhi, Rahul and Priyanka in this matter, Robert Vadra in his own matter. So, it's some kind of I don't know what it is, a plan, or there is now a lot of judicial weight being put on them. And you will have to see, look, the one remarkable thing about the Congress is they are consistently fond of betrayal. So the point that Pallavi made may well happen. People may say that, look, this is a godsend. If these guys are out of the picture, we could perhaps reinvent the party. But I will only go back to what Kamal Nath once famously said. He says the Congress is the glue. The Gandhis are the glue for the Congress. Now you've got to decide whether you'd be happier with Fevicol or with the Gandhis.
But hasn't this also been going on for too long? I mean, the general public has been hearing about National Herald forever. And now suddenly it's activated again. But this has happened in the past. It's been activated, then it's died down, then it's been activated again. Jay, can that happen again now?
Yeah, because, prosecuting agencies, can you imagine how burdened our prosecuting agencies are, right? Or investigating agencies are. You have, there was a time when there was a scam a minute. And now, of course, I'm with you as even as a person, as a lay person also would really wonder, why is it that these cases take so long to sort of come to some sort of conclusion? It shouldn't happen. There should be day-to-day hearings in these matters. And now that the charge sheet has been filed, there's really no reason to delay it. But, if I may just weigh in on one aspect, which is, of course, not my domain. It is, it's a political thought. I think the idea could be perhaps to finally land a conviction. And this is Mr. Modi's third term. These cases have gone on, they've sort of soft-pedaled these cases, the investigating agencies, for whatever reason. Perhaps this time, this is going to lead to a conviction, is what I feel. And then, as we know, under the Representation of People's Act, this will then lead to...
They can't be in Parliament.
And they cannot be in Parliament. And not only that, they are barred from contesting elections for another X number of years. But I'm not so sure. But which is what I'd love to ask Mr. Seth also. Doesn't it really suit the BJP to have Rahul there as long as possible? Why push him out? What sense will it make pushing him out?
Jay, just a programming note. We call him Uncle Seth on this channel.
Yes,
he's not my uncle. I'm not going to call him that.
So let me tell you. I think Jay. So 1 minute, let's be serious, Pallavi. Let's be serious. You see, there are three imponderables here. The ideal case would be a conviction, but the India of today has also changed. See, the sympathy that Mrs. Gandhi evoked in 1977 will not be the sympathy that this family will evoke, I think.
Very true.
Because
you're absolutely right.
The country has changed.
Very true.
Number two, what Narendra Modi is doing is very wisely letting the courts play out. So, in a manner of speaking, even the delays are suggestive of the fact that, look, if we really wanted vendetta, we could have fast-tracked it. But we are not in that business.
Correct.
The third is the moment you keep someone as senior as the Gandhis distracted, you also make them feel like gods with feet of clay in front of their own cadres. So you're diminishing their value and their stature with every passing day. Well, obviously, this money hasn't flown down or hasn't gotten down to the cadres. So there is that angle also. So I don't know how it'll play out, but obviously the entanglement has begun. It is serious. and it will have long-term repercussions not only on the Congress party but even on the politics of India and certainly parliamentary politics.
Jay, what's the kind of punishment they can get? Like, what kind of conviction? What does it carry? Jail term? How long?
Up to 7 years. Up to 7 years. But more interesting is that, see, there'll be even if there is a conviction, they will appeal it and they can get it suspended. But the point is that once all of those appeals run out, then the Representation of People's Act, that kicks in, and then that disqualification happens from Parliament, as we're all familiar with, as how that happens, and then you get disqualified for another X number of years, and you cannot then contest, right? I think 6 years, if I'm not wrong. So you're out. So you serve your sentence, which is the period the period of your sentence, plus another 6 years you're disqualified from contesting another election. So it's extremely serious. But I'm not sure. I mean, I tried doing some research on this. I'm not sure if anybody's really suffered that sort of consequence yet. Any politician, serious politician.
And from start to finish,
I mean, look at Lalu Yadav. Right? I mean, he's still he's been convicted and he's still out. Start to finish, it can take, there's no way to predict this.
The only problem is Rahul Gandhi doesn't have a wife to place in his place yet.
Yeah, true.
Priyanka Gandhi may rise. Priyanka Vadra. She's the only one.
Priyanka is also entangled in this now. Priyanka is also entangled. Oh, is she not? Is she not a named party in the National Herald case? Okay, I stand corrected.
No, she's not.
No, neither her husband nor her.
Then perfect. I stand corrected. I assume.
No, but she will get entangled. You see, Robert Vadra's cases, those are in fact extremely serious cases where he's involved with that chap called Sanjay Bhandari, who's hiding now in London. And Bhandari was basically his benamidar. This is what the allegation is, that he has multiple assets, fabulous assets in London. And Sanjay Bhandari basically was his keeper or whatever, his benamidar. So once that picks up steam, I would imagine that it will also draw within its ambit Priyanka Gandhi. She will be equally, I mean, if you ask me, did she not know what her husband was doing, or did she not enjoy those assets, or was she not there has she lived in those assets or in those flats in London? I mean, these are questions to be asked. So I think she'll get pulled in as well.
Yeah. Proceeds of crime, yeah.
Yes.
Pallavi, how are you reading it?
I agree with Suhel. I mean, times have changed. But actually, the other thing also, which many people ask, and why they're very condescending about it, plus many in the Congress party also say ki nahi, kuch bhi nahi hoga, is the long time which the BJP seems to have taken in kind of, not a BJP, the long time that it has taken to take any action against any of these people. So they feel that this is something which is just political witch hunt, which is being played upon by, say, a Vadra, or being played up by the Gandhis, ki kuch bhi ho raha hai, Bihar elections aa rahe hain, Rahul Gandhi is going here, he's doing this, and that is why every time something they do, you have to come out with these kind of order, chart sheet, and so on and so forth. So there is something which many people don't understand, that why is it nothing is done? Why is no action being taken? I mean, 11 years is a long, long time in the case of Robert Vadra case. I mean, what Jay was saying is that, prosecution does take a lot of time. But this is something which we may understand, but the common man doesn't understand.
But it's a great strategy. It's a great strategy from the Prime Minister. It's a great strategy from the legal advisors that he has.
Which is why
it's a great strategy. Allow the courts. I'll tell you. Allow the courts to behave in as similar a manner with the Gandhis as they would behave with common people. Because here's the thing. Imagine if this case had been fast-tracked in the first 2 years of Narendra Modi's arrival. Political vendetta would have been number one. On the contrary, people have turned, and people are now questioning Modi that why is the Vadra case taking so long? So it's fitting beautifully into his playbook, saying that, look, there is no vendetta. What do I do? So the ire that would have been directed at Narendra Modi will today be directed at the judicial process and its slow pace. So he is very conveniently and rightly shifted.
And it takes away this defense of playing victim, right? I mean, they can't play victim anymore. That, oh, look, they're targeting us because they're in power and now they're doing this and that. So whatever currency they could have gained from being victimized.
So
They've got
I,
Singhvi, they've got Kapil Sibal, they've
Correct.
got good lawyers.
so I want to
So no
ask
one
you.
can say that. Sorry,
I
you
want
were
to ask
saying.
you all. It's quite well known that this is also personal on some level. Remember, this is the same lot when they were in power. They ensured that Amit Shah went to jail for 10 months, had no access to Gujarat, his home state. So there is a personal element to it as well. And of course, Prime Minister Modi went through that very long investigation for a
CBI
dozen years.
grilling. Yeah. And he
Yes,
was grilled
which
by the CBI for 12 hours on one occasion.
exactly.
बिल्कुल ना,
So
पारी
is
एक
this
month
now
और
keeping
बिल्कुल.
that in mind?
Thank
Is this the kill shot? Oh my God, AIM is here as well.
Look,
So can I just
Advaita, the
complete what I'm
problem,
saying? I'll tell
Advaita,
you what, I'll complete what I'm
1
saying
minute here.
before Suhel
Pallavi,
just interrupted. It's a nasty
Pallavi,
habit, Suhel,
beta,
to have
1
a
minute,
gossiping.
1
Pallavi
minute.
is getting upset. Please stop. Suhel, let
Pallavi is
Pallavi
a
speak.
sweet, Pallavi, a very sweet person. Let me just say one thing, Advaita.
Please, I'm not
Again,
going to
your
fall for it.
knowledge, again, your knowledge is feeble and scattered.
Everything is about everyone
I'll tell
else.
you
Why
why.
don't stick to
The
the
point
topic?
that you just made smacks of irrelevance and ignorance. Now tell me, what
Oh,
was the point you made?
I said, is
Why do
this
you
the
say
kill
what you're
shot when
saying,
it
Suhel?
comes to the Gandhis?
Yeah, now the vendetta or vengeance on Amit Shah has already been handed down to P. Chidambaram. So that equation has been sorted out. Exact number of days that Mr. Shah was incarcerated, as many days Chidambaram was incarcerated. This is now with, as Jay said and defined them as the first family. Now the battle has moved to the family, which means the Malik. This is going to get interesting. And as I said, conveniently, the ire will shift from Modi to the judiciary, saying that why is this taking so long?
Yeah, Pallavi, please. I'm sorry for
So I
Suhail's
see. I
interruptions.
understand what Suhail and Jay are saying, and Suhail is correct when he says that it's a smart strategy coming in from the government because it doesn't want to see like it's running into vendetta politics. But there's another flip side to it, which many in the Congress. I'm only telling you as a reporter. Okay, what I get the
So
feedback the moment.
1 minute. I don't want to interrupt you.
Again, Suhail, this is
Another 1 minute. Another flip side is grammatically
Okay,
incorrect.
fine,
The flip
Suhail.
side is another side. So just say
Oh,
the flip side. When you say another flip side, it jars my mind. Please, thank you. Continue.
Jay, I want to know one thing, if you don't mind. As a lawyer, what Suhail is doing to me, can that be construed as harassing a journalist?
a professional. A
No,
No,
professional.
it's called
unfortunately not.
No, it's
filibustering.
not. Okay,
It's called
fine.
filibustering, but you won't be able to spell that word. It's called filibustering.
Terrible.
And
Okay,
Philly is not
so I
spelled
tell you
F
what,
I L L Y.
Suhail, can I complete? I'll just take
Wait,
2
Jay,
minutes. Yeah,
people
I
are
don't want to
finding
take
your
that much of
voice
time.
very hot.
So there,
We have such
there is a
serious
sense
viewers.
many
But
We have
in the
such
Jay
Congress
would
serious
make
party.
viewers.
Jay would make for a very great voiceover person for commercials and all that.
Thank you. That's very
Suhail,
kind
come
of
on,
you.
nice to offer him a job, but Jay, please don't fall for it. Okay, what I'm saying is that so many in the Congress party say, "Arey kuch nahi hoga," so they don't even take it too seriously. So for them, it's very half-hearted. Like in the case of Mohua Moitro, also many people say the same thing. Dekho charge sheet bhi file nahi hua, ye bhi nahi hua, wo nahi hua, and the BJP just drums up this kind of a narrative that corruption hai, and then they say that let them walk the talk. 11 years for Robert Vadra, there's nothing to it, which gives that
I can see
handle
that.
to the Congress party and to the Gandhis to make the point that this is just a clear-cut case of political witch hunt because even the government knows that they don't have a case. I'm done.
But see, Pallavi, but they're right? For a layperson, and I'm taking the layperson
I'm
perspective
talking from
here.
the layperson's point of
No,
view
I'm
only.
I'm offering that perspective on the panel. Is that if you have someone like a Mahua Moitra back in Parliament and she's out for whatever months, then you're like, okay, what's going on here? I mean, this is just
Exactly.
usual political drama.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this will play out. I just want to stick to the National Herald thing. In Subramaniam Swamy, you have a person who is unrelenting. So he will have a relentless
True.
pursuit.
Yeah.
And for Subramaniam Swamy, to my mind, I mean, it's not that he's told me, I think it is both personal and political. When it becomes personal and political, you tend to raise the ante, which is what he's done. A. B. I think people are going to keep, stoking the fires as much as they can And hopefully the judicial process will kick in sooner rather than later.
I agree with Suhel. I think also look at Lalu Yadav's case, right? Nobody imagined that Lalu Yadav would ever get convicted. Sure, I mean, sure, he's out on bail. He's on bail pending appeal. So his appeal is yet to be heard. But, take that as a classic case. He's out and about. I believe, gotten bail on poor health as being one of the grounds why they've given him bail. But there are videos of him out there playing badminton, campaigning for his kids in Bihar during the Bihar election. So you're right. So there is a lot of disillusionment among the people, and then they ask questions, So it is strange. But I agree with very specifically, I agree with what Suhel said about the ire being redirected from the government. So basically, the government is what? The executive agencies are the prosecutors, right? They're the prosecuting agencies and the investigating agencies. You've redirected that ire now of delay, rightly, if you ask me, to the judiciary, right? I mean, why is it that some cases are deemed to be more special than others and are heard immediately when these petitions are filed? But why is it that other cases linger on for years and years and don't even get listed? I mean, cases, there are, cases pertaining to property matters, that involve rights of citizens. Why aren't those cases taken up with the same speed? So these are important questions to ask. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Also, the other thing, Jay, is this abysmal rate of convictions of ED cases, something like 2%.
No. Thank God for that. That just goes to show, that tells you two things, Advaita. It tells you, one, that you still have, your judiciary is still absolutely fair and independent. It tells you that. But it also tells you that honest field work, honest field investigation is seriously lacking in our investigating agencies. That's what it tells you also. Because unless you prove, and the threshold for proving a criminal offense is that you have to prove it beyond all reasonable doubt, right? So it's like saying that there cannot be another probability or a possibility for an incident or for something to have occurred. You have to rule out all other possibilities. So you have a very alert judiciary, very alert judges who are alive to that standard of law, right? So it tells you. So these are the two things I glean from it: that you have excellent judges, who understand that.
Advaita, I'll beg leave, and it was lovely meeting all of you. And
it was lovely.
I hope.
Yeah.
Have a safe flight, Suhel.
Thank you.
Where's he going?
Bye.
Happy travels.
Thank you.
Get me Reese's peanut butter cups, please.
Where's he going?
Sure.
Suhel, where are you going?
Look at your weight. Thank you, Pallavi. Bye bye. I'm gonna Gurgaon. Bye bye.
Pallavi. Go ahead, Pallavi. You wanted to say something.
No, nothing. I wasn't saying. I was just asking Suhel. No, can I ask a question? If you have, I have your permission, Advaita. I know the digression. Maybe we can talk about it a little later. What do you make of this whole vice president's comment? Because I see the entire
I was going to come to that.
Up in arms, and even those people from the opposition parties who are also a part of the judiciary or who are lawyers, like a Kapil Sibal, Salman Khurshid. What do you make of it? I mean, if you can talk about it later or whatever. You're muted.
Pallavi, I know. I heard that. No, see, I have only 3 or 4 points to make about this. Very interesting points. So I studied it. I looked at this 414-page judgment of the Supreme Court, which is basically now at the center of, in the center of this storm. First, I largely agree with what the Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has said. He's right. What happens is there's a very thin line between judicial activism and judicial overreach. And in this case, it is 100% a classic case of judicial overreach. The Supreme Court and its judges, with all due respect to them, they are unelected. They are not there to make laws, they are there to interpret laws. This is a very important fundamental thing that we must sort of accept in our constitutional framework. And also there is separation of powers, which means that the judges interpret laws, the legislature makes laws, and the executive enforces them. Now, what do you have in this case? Very simple. I'll just break it down into 3 points. You had the Tamil Nadu Assembly come up with some bills, right, which were passed. The Constitution requires under Article 200 that these bills are sent to the governor for his assent. Governor grants his assent or does not grant assent. And the third option is, for reconsideration, he sends them to the President of India. He says, look, this doesn't seem right to me. You please decide. These are the three options available. If he doesn't grant assent, right? If he withholds assent, he can send it back to the assembly with his suggestions, or he can simply say reconsider. These are basically some of the options available. The assembly then can send it back to him. Once it is sent back to him, he ideally should not withhold assent. However, the third option kicks in. He can send it to the president. Now, what the Supreme Court has done here, correct. Now, this is where it becomes really interesting, where I said 3 points. What the Supreme Court does, according to me, completely unconstitutional. It's a 2-judge bench. It will go before a larger bench, is my prediction, and it will be overturned. But what the Supreme Court has done is, it has basically read meaning into what the articles of the Constitution say, which according to me is absolutely wrong. That power is only with the Parliament to amend it under Article 368. So the first one, very quickly, I don't want to bore you, but under Article 200, the Supreme Court has said that he now must, when the governor sends it back to the assembly, he must indicate a specific reason. It's not there in the original article of the Constitution. That is first mistake, according to me. The second, Article 201. So, as I had pointed out earlier, when the governor sends it for reconsideration to the president, there is no time limit, Advaita, Pallavi, that is prescribed for the president to decide. It's not there in the Constitution. Which is why the term pocket veto comes up, right? He can just sit on it. Now, there are many reasons, justifiable reasons, why this power has been granted by the makers of the Constitution. I mean, you had the Constituent Assembly sitting for days on end, for years, sitting on the draft of the Constitution, and certainly they would have perceived such a situation, right? I mean, this would not have been beyond comprehension. But even they did not prescribe a time limit. So this is the second mistake. The Supreme Court has now infused a time limit of 3 months on the president and said that if the president keeps it for 3 months or longer, once it is sent from the governor, then the concerned state can file a petition in the Supreme Court and ask for a writ of mandamus to the president to convert it into law. This is absolutely unconstitutional. He is usurping. Please see what's happening. The Supreme Court is essentially usurping now the powers of the President of India. This is a complete violation of the separation of powers that is contemplated under Article 50 of our Constitution. And third, most shocking.
Jay, but doesn't this process also undermine the agency of the executive, because they are elected by the people, they are the voice of the people?
Oh, you asked such an excellent question, and and I'm a bit of a constitutional law nerd, and this is where you've asked a really good question, and I'll tell you why. The Supreme Court, this is very interesting and very simple. I'll break it down into a very simple sort of answer. The third thing was that, the Supreme Court says that once it comes back from the governor to the president for reconsideration, the president ought to, this is the wording that is used in the Supreme Court judgment, ought to invoke the advisory jurisdiction under Article 143, and then you must sort of subscribe to that, whatever the Supreme Court decides, that it is binding upon you, which is not even what the original article says. And by doing that, it ignores, now coming back to what you said, Advaita, you spoke of the executive. We all remember from our civics lessons in school that Article 74, it is always on the aid and advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers that the President acts. So you have done what? That under the garb of sort of judicial activism, you've pivoted for judicial formalism, because you've ignored that the decision of the president actually is a reflection of the decision of the Council of Ministers led by the Prime Minister. So you've ignored that completely. And you're treating it as though it is the sole discretion of the president, which is absolutely wrong.
But then you move into another space, right, which is the federal structure and the state-center relationship. So then you get into another complexity with that.
No, I'll answer that. So we're a quasi-federal structure. We're neither unitary, we're neither purely federal, we're quasi-federal. So the governor, Advaita, is an agent of the president, right? So and if you study the oath of the president and the governor, their oath, and this is what Jagdeep Dhankar also said in his speech very rightly. He said their oath is to preserve and protect the Constitution of India. So the governor is acting basically as the agent of the president to ensure that Article 1 of the Constitution is preserved, that Bharat, that is India, is a union of states. So you have to preserve the sovereignty, the integrity of the Union of India is protected by the governor in the name of the president. So now you can't have the Supreme Court stepping in, and which is what brings me to the final thing, Article 142. You can't invoke Article 142 to upturn constitutional provisions in this manner. You just can't do it. It is used in extraordinary circumstances. You can't take away powers granted to the president because you think it is appropriate, right? And it's a two-judge bench. It's my prediction, 110% the government will challenge it and it will be set aside by a five-judge bench, which is what we call a constitutional bench. It'll go. It has to go. And I mean, if you look at, and this is what blows my mind, if you look at these three articles, right, 200, 201, and 143, the language is so simple and so clear that it leaves no room for misinterpretation. So what the Supreme Court has done to me is, I mean, great respect for Justice Pardiwala. He's the author of the judgment. But again, why 414 pages to make your point? Why? Why should it take 414 pages? You could have said all of this in 40 pages. You know, I mean, 40 is too much if you ask me. Why do you need 400 pages to say all of this? I think it's such a waste of taxpayers' money.
And the Honorable Vice President is, of course, a lawyer by trade. So he knows his law, he knows how the system works. But is it appropriate that he spoke on this? Like a lot of people, especially in the Congress, and are saying, why did he speak on this? Now, is this, or was he like, he's the Vice President, this directly relates to the President. So an intervention was fine, was expected, or could be understood.
I think it was appropriate. And I'll tell you why. The Supreme Court passed directions against the President. But the President of India, through his sort of legal representative, the center, was never heard in this matter. Because this was only ancillary. The President's role under Article 201 was ancillary to the Governor's role under Article 200. It wasn't directly at issue. So if you had to opine and decide and pass directions to the President, it's a fundamental rule of law. If I'm passing directions against you, Advaita, I have to hear you first.
Yeah.
So it was right for Jagdeep Dhankar to
say. Has this happened before? No,
it doesn't. I mean, you have to hear a party. No, it has never happened before. You have to hear a party. How can you not? I mean, it has happened in the sense that whenever it has happened, it has never been sustained. It has always sort of been overturned. So Jagdeep Dhankar, great respect to him. I mean, a farmer's son, grew up in the middle of nowhere, became a senior counsel on his own in the Supreme Court, was successful in politics. He served as a governor, then comes as the vice president. He's a very, very intelligent man. And I've seen some parliamentarians make fun of him outside the steps of parliament, mock him and do all that. It's in very poor taste.
Yeah.
It's horrible. But the man is extremely sharp and he understands constitutional law very well. And what he said, if you really ask me, is 100% correct. Judges aren't elected, Advaita. You can't, this is, in the US, they call it the tyranny of the unelected.
Right.
So,
which is what we call Rajya Sabha MPs also, right? But, I have a personal anecdote. The Vice President had a dinner at his house and we were invited. And after the dinner, he's an elderly gentleman as well. He's not a young man. And he came out and he bid every single car and person goodbye. He stood for about, whatever, 15, 20 minutes. And there was such humility in that. Yeah. And they say, he behaves this way with the Prime Minister and that.
No, I must tell you something also.
This is how he behaves with ordinary people. Yeah.
And not only that, I'll tell you another thing about him. Pallavi, you're ditching us?
Yeah, I have to leave. My food has come.
Okay.
Your what? Oh, her food has come. Okay. I won't keep Jay too long. Also, after this, I'll let Jay go. Wind up.
No, I remember this incident. Someone told me about that. Even his, people who are his detractors and critics, they can be, some folks were very rude to him, but he was never once rude back to them. So he was very humble even with them. So I think it's a great quality, and perhaps that is the quality that has sustained him in public life for as long as it has, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, it was an eye-opener. I said, so we don't do it so often when guests leave. And here's this person, and it's not like everybody was a VIP in that room. Correct. And that's just his character. So
old school values, right? I mean, fantastic old school values that every guest is basically treated like God. I mean, whoever comes into your home, then you personally go and see them off. It's a very rare quality.
Especially now. True. But thank you so much. I'm very nice to my guests. Jay. So I'm going
No,
to
but
let
this was
you go
great.
now.
This was great fun. Thank you, and I had a great time. Thank you, and I look
Then come
forward to being
again.
back.
Come again.
I will. I will.
I will
Yeah.
keep checking with you whenever there's something interesting
Thank you.
and you're
Thank you
free
so
and not
much.
traveling. But thank you once again. And thank you everybody for watching. And God, Abhijit is back. Why do, I mean, if they're not, Jay, if they're not in the show, they're in the comments. It's like, this is stalking, right? Technically, this is stalking.
No, it isn't. I'm afraid not.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thank
And we'll
you.
be back.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Jay. Bye.